as soon as I started to take steps to get help from being at my lowest of the low, I started very slowly to see the light again. And I think that, it's easy to say, oh, I wish I'd done it like straight away, but I don't think I really, was fully aware of the extent of how much it affected me.
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. In this episode today, I'll be chatting with health and fitness competitor and coach, Kirstie George. Kirstie has set herself the mission to educate and support busy women to feel stronger, build confidence, and lead happier, healthier lifestyles. She became a personal trainer in 2018 after experiencing a life-changing event, and following that, her own fitness journey. She was diagnosed with PTSD after experiencing 2 pregnancy losses and a traumatic second birth where she nearly lost her life. Understandably, her mental health was at rock bottom and she started suffering panic attacks, anxiety and depression. This is when she started lifting weights and in hope of helping her through her sort of lack of better mindset or positive mindset. Now Kirstie feels strongly about helping women to feel empowered through health and fitness, as previously she had always obsessed with fad diets, cardio, and the number on the scales. She had yo-yo dieted for many years and never felt truly happy in her own skin, always looking for that secret. During this transformational time, she turned her pain into power by competing in 4 bikini competitions in 9 months, turning herself into a pro athlete in 2 federations. Kirstie is the author of Build Habits for Women and has recently been nominated the most motivational athlete of the year at Pure Elite. What an incredible little resume, if you will. How are you today, Kirstie? All right?
That's really good. Thank you so much for having me on, Johnny. Like, it's an absolute honor to come on. Listening to that makes me go, whoa.
Yeah. And that's all true. That's all true. And that's what's amazing. I mean, like 2018, that's not very long ago at all, is it?
No, it kind of feels like it's only when you look back on the journey, like how far I've come. Because when you're stuck in what I would call a hole, a black hole,
yeah,
feel like you just can't see kind of the light. And I think that, there'll be many people that probably have experienced that, some kind of mental health, issue. It's just literally like being, an amazing journey, especially like obviously 2022 for me was like the first year that I didn't have a panic attack or any kind of form of what I would call severe anxiety.
Love it. Yeah, that's great.
Reflecting on that, and I did share that on my social media last week, and it was kind of like, wow, what a feeling. Because I've got coping mechanisms to control that and be able to manage that, but just how I'd feel day to day, I kind of sometimes functioning, whereas now I'm thriving.
I love that because it reminds me of this quote that I heard once, and it's like, when you're in a dark place and you feel like you've been buried, you've actually been planted. And it's like, when you realize that, it's just like, well, wait a second, I've been planted, I'm here for a reason. What is that reason? Let's have a look about, let's investigate, let's understand it. And then I look at like, 2018 to 2022 it's really not a long time to become an author, first of all, to completely transform your body, and to become a pro athlete, and to compete in 4 bikini competitions, and then get nominated with Pure Elite as most motivated. Because I mean, Pure Elite, there's a lot of strong athletes in that sort of federation. So
that was literally, and that was voted by athletes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I think that one probably, I mean, I cried like a baby. That's quite, that's quite recent. That was at the end of this year. It was just like the icing on the cake, really. I mean, I saw the nominations and went, it was almost like one of those moments of, it's me. What?
I definitely would have been one of those that rung and said, I think you've made a mistake.
I honest to God was like, I was a bit, not because, I don't believe I've worked so incredibly hard.
Of course.
And I, obviously I have a client base, and my social media, I really try to empower, lift other women up, motivate, inspire from, my story, but also client journeys. But to see the nomination, I was just like, wowzers. And do you know what was crazy, Johnny? Two of my really close bikini friends, they were like, we're going to get the camera ready to video. I went, don't worry, because I haven't won this, right? And I was sitting on the table with my coach, my friends, and my coach's team. And thank goodness, this is like Zoe, you obviously like know Zoe, she got the video out, but she got my face, but I'd already said, don't worry, because I know this one isn't going to be me. And then, it was just such an honor to win that award. It really was.
That's amazing. I mean, like you say, Zoe, I mean, she gets so emotionally involved in helping people in the right way, not in the wrong way. And she just she's got a lot of wisdom. She's got a lot. I mean, you know her story. I mean, it's remarkable. So I've got a lot of time for Zoe and the stuff that she's been through. She's been to places that people will just never go. So it
has. And I mean, we met at a photo shoot like just over a year ago. So it would have been the first time I competed was last November, so November 2021. And it wasn't, I think that's probably my failures, like ultimately, particularly in competing, that's how I kind of succeeded. This year I need to go through that process, but that's how Zoe and I met. Like, we met at a photo shoot, and we just kind of like bonded. And I think because we both had an experience where we have nearly lost our lives. Obviously for her, she went through hugely traumatic time. So I feel like we kind of met for a reason. So great to have her as part.
It's interesting, there's a lot of similarities actually between you both in many ways, and it's just it's so wonderful to see her pregnant now, and to see all that, because like
he's only got a few weeks.
I know, so. And we did a thing called Strength Shed Sessions a few years back, and off camera we were talking quite a lot about different things, and I just remember her sitting there telling me that that was the dream, and literally that woman has created, like, off camera she told me how she wanted her life to look. She has done it. She really has. But another sort of quote I remember, it makes you think of you with 2018 to 2022. And there's this saying or quote that's if you have 8 hours to chop down a tree, you spend 6 hours sharpening your axe. And it's like, you've done that in 4 years, but there's a large majority, say 3 years, where you were doing the work, you were sharpening the axe, and then you get to 2022 and it's like, right, trying to chop the tree down, and you smashed it.
That's a really good quote, because you're right. Do the work internally, and I feel like I did all that work to become the woman I wanted to be in 2022. And I had to honestly, I had to go through so many changes to do that. So much hard work, mentally, physically, kind of behind the scenes.
I
mean, the woman,
a lot of self-talk goes on, doesn't it? And the self-doubt and all that sort of stuff.
Self-doubt. I mean, I was only talking to a friend the other day. I mean, I remember going to my PT course and the anxiety I'd get getting in the car. This was the COVID days when you actually went and studied in a gym and it was a class environment. I remember just feeling so nervous, even just showing up for that. I had, a toddler at the time.
Do you have imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, what am I doing here? I made it, a change from being a retail area manager for years. So my career was, I was a store manager, then a retail area manager. And then when I had my first daughter, it was kind of like, I was just trying to find the right career for me, because retail area manager didn't fit with a young baby. And I did, bits and pieces. And when I had Freya, my second daughter, that was when obviously that event, that life-changing event, completely changed my life. It changed my outlook on everything. And it's really hard to explain to somebody who's not gone through it, but it is like an out-of-body experience. Like, for me, the lights just went off. There's probably a trigger warning on this, because if there's anybody who is pregnant or is going to have a baby, they may not want to listen to this part. But I'd struggled to conceive Freya, and I'd had 2 miscarriages before I had her. And so I was already, I guess, going into that pregnancy already quite traumatized. I was already suffering. I was grieving for 2 losses. I never really relaxed through that whole pregnancy. When I delivered her, she was fine. Everything was okay. And then before I knew it, I could see that the midwives, the bits I remember, I could see the midwives clock watching. It was almost like they were looking at a clock. And they said the placenta hasn't delivered. So they asked me to get up. And I remember looking round and looking at the bed, and I was like, what is that? And it was just literally my blood. So at that point, the lights, I'm just going to start breathing now. The lights go out, and all I know is my husband said I literally hit the floor, and he said the room was just filled. So at that point, I don't remember. I'd had a class 4 hemorrhage. The placenta had retained inside, so it hadn't delivered. So I then had to have an emergency blood transfusion and an emergency operation to remove the placenta. So things are very, how can I put it? Like when you experience that, there's only snippets that I remember. So like, I remember, the blood transfusion. I remember waking and screaming for Freya. So there's very, they kind of explained to me when I went through counselling and grief counselling that it was okay to not remember everything, and things would potentially like come back, which bits and pieces did. But ultimately that whole event, physically and mentally, took me to like rock bottom, like the worst place. But I think the biggest problem with it was I didn't process it fully straight away.
Yeah.
I was in hospital for quite a time. I was, obviously in intensive care. I didn't really, I didn't realise, I don't think, how serious things were, for a period of time. And it was actually when one of the midwives came to see me at home, and she was like, what happened to you is just so rare. Like, it's such a rare thing to happen. And it's okay, to be feeling or struggling with how you're feeling. I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I think that it then was it was very much a delayed reaction, that I didn't get diagnosed with PTSD, straight away. They kind of said I was suffering, but I didn't kind of believe it. I felt that be strong and just get on with it, and I should be grateful that I'd had my daughter, because I'd lost
that word grateful can be a real trap, can't it? It really can.
It really is, because actually I think that kind of delayed like me actually dealing with that trauma and healing and grieving and getting the help and support I needed. And it took for me to almost be sat with my 2 very young daughters, a baby and a 3-year-old, ringing and calling the Samaritans for help. It took me to get to that point, because I wouldn't ask for help. I was trying to be, strong. And I would say to anyone who's, suffering, don't ignore it. Don't, all the warning signs were there for me. And I think that, it was the worst possible place that I could ever have been. But once I actually got help, support, counselling, I was able to start to, to rebuild my life. And then from there, that's kind of where my journey of lifting weights, it came from nothing really to do with my body. It was all about feeling mentally and physically strong. And I remember the first time I went into the gym, it was almost like, I'm not joking, it was like that. The hand just,
I've seen that so many times, and majority of the time from women, unfortunately.
yeah, me too. And I remember thinking, you're here for a reason, you know, you're here to get stronger. And for me, it just, to start with, was really nerve-wracking. I would say to anyone, you know, it's okay to feel like that. I mean, even now, Johnny, I'll trip over or drop away, or, you know, do something silly in the gym. But I think that I kind of had to start, like everybody has to start. And once I'd kind of got in and got, you know, it just helped my mind so much. Like,
do you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of this analogy, and it's like, so someone might be looking for health and fitness work. There might be a woman, they might be inspired by your story, and they go on to your social media and they see your wonderful page of all this inspiration, all these pictures, and they see sort of the finished article. But it's only when you dig deep and you look into it and you realize that actually this woman's been through hell. And it's like, there's this analogy of like walking through broken glass and thorns and fire, and your feet are bleeding, and you get to the top of the mountain and you look down, and all people can see is you at the top of the mountain below. Yeah, you're facing that direction, and behind you is broken glass and all this stuff. And they can't see that, and they don't understand it. They just see this lady who's getting photographs taken, looking really wonderful and all that. And they think, oh, it's that simple, right? It's no one said it was.
And that's the thing, you know, I try to share as much as I have,
which is difficult,
as much as I have. I mean, you know, when you go through such a traumatic event, the last thing my husband was going to do is pick up the phone and, you know, and start videoing what kind of happened. And it's kind of, it's so hard to explain to people that for me personally, I do believe what happened made me stronger, because I feel like on a day-to-day basis, just getting up and actually like functioning at that point after I'd had Freya was a win. And to even have the courage and the strength and feel brave enough to go and sign up for a PT course. You know, I sat there for ages, Johnny, going, who do you think you are? Like that imposter syndrome. You're just a woman who started lifting weights to help her mental health. But I strongly felt I wanted to help other people. I felt that I could give them something, you know, that I could help them, because I'd not come from, you know, a perfect body. You know, I'm a mum. I've gone through so much that's been difficult. And I felt like, you know, that gives me something to help people to overcome all those barriers, those limiting self-beliefs.
Experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more striking. There was an image. I don't know whether you put them next to each other or I just saw them, but there's a video of you doing press ups. I think I'm just going to guess in your pajamas, maybe. I'm not sure. And doing press ups with your daughters sat next to you, and then you know, you fast forward and then you see you on stage. And it's just like, that's so real. Like that was.
There's one, Freya sat, I swear she's about 6 or 7 months old. And Evie's jumping or doing something. She was,
it's such a powerful, real thing. Because like, that is the realism of it is like, you know, a lot of fitness influencers, they do all the aesthetic stuff, which you do. You've got to play the game, right? And also there's a sense of pride that comes with it as well. Like, you know, you've earned what you have and you're proud of it, and that's wonderful. But there's also that real part of it, like the real life bit where, sometimes you just have to, you know, you've got 2 kids, you've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe. One's asleep, one's bouncing about. Right, let's get it done, you know? And that's kind of what it takes, isn't it?
No, I didn't actually join a gym till, you know, Freya was, well, she would have been like nearly 2, because all my workouts were kind of at home, because like I said to you previously, just getting in and actually going to the gym was like and probably would be anxiety for anybody, but for somebody who's had PTSD, it was a huge trigger. So I just remember having to like take huge deep breaths. I'd always have brilliant headphones, great music. And every time I went, I just felt like I'd overcome another hurdle, another barrier, you know?
Yeah, you're moving towards what you want.
Yeah. I don't think when I started, I always talked about competing, like I always talked about it, but I had such a huge fear that I always said, I'll never do it, I'll never do it. But the reason I said that is because I was scared, you know, I was scared of failure. Like I was scared of actually getting up there and doing it, because I thought, you know, I was probably more scared to fail than, you know, than anything.
Yeah. What did failure look like?
I think I am very competitive. Like I won't lie to you. I'm a person that kind of comes from like my retail area management days, you know, target sales driven. And I guess even now, you know, as an online coach, I want my clients to succeed, you know, whatever that looks like. It is aesthetic for a lot of them, but not for all. Sometimes it's how they feel about themselves, like feeling happier, feeling stronger, feeling more confident. So for me, that's important. So the failure was not getting the placing. So the first competition, I didn't place where I wanted to place. There were a number of reasons for that. Like, and I have shared this. I got on stage with shingles on my first competition. I was I was in agony, and there is no excuse for that. You know, I truly believe that those first two shows were there for me to learn. You know, other people smashed it, and yes, it was hard. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I actually think it fueled the fire for me to go and do it differently. And you know, I changed coaches, I learned, I took all the lessons from it. I kind of like lapped it up rather than woe is me in the failure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because it's like some bugger always puts the real learning on the other side of like horror. It's like, why? It's like there's a pot of gold over there, but you've got to go through that thorn bush and then climb through that pit of snakes, and then when you get there, there's mass load of fire. You got to go. It's like, really?
I know, it's so true, isn't it? And like, I guess, excuse me, coughing. I guess again, like maybe, you know, I think that I learn through failure. Like I know everybody's scared of it, they're afraid of it, but do you know what, you don't have to be perfect. Like life's not perfect. And if you can take so many lessons and so many learns from things that, you know, you experience and you go through, for me then it almost fueled the fire. Like it set that motivation inside me to go back and do it differently. And that's exactly what 2022 was about. I'd said in my head, I want that pro card, I want that pro card. And you know what, even self-doubt and my limiting self-beliefs, and I'll say this to anybody that has those, it's normal to feel that way. It's normal to have those limiting self-beliefs. It's normal to be scared of feeling your fear of failure, but don't allow it to hold you back. Like don't allow it to hold you back from your dreams, your goals, your potential. And I'm going to share this because I think it's important for anybody. Even on that day this year when I got my pro card in July, I still backstage had a moment of, am I going to get it today? And I shared a really lovely moment with another competitor, and we had a massive hug and a little bit of a cry, I won't lie, because we didn't think we had got what we wanted on that day. And then we were called out for that category for Mums That Lift, and we both got our pro cards. Oh my God, it was like, the emotion was, but just think of that moment, that self-doubt was still there, that fear of failure almost was still there. But I knew I'd done everything I could. Like I'd worked so hard to earn that right. But it's okay to still have a bit of doubt. You just, what you focus on, pushing yourself forward, keep taking action, rather than allowing it to almost like cripple you, because I think fear can't it?
almost always, whenever I'm working with somebody that's struggling to move towards what they want, it's almost always something based in fear. Every single, I'm very lucky. I get to work with some very successful people, have very great businesses and all these sorts of things. And what's funny to me is that I work with people that are, say, at the beginning of their journey. They want to move towards a goal or some version of success. And they say, oh, I've got imposter syndrome. And I just chuckle and congratulate them. And they say, what do you mean? I said, well, every successful person I've ever met has had imposter syndrome. So it must be a sign you're moving towards what you want,
Yes.
So
it's that they say, don't they, that nothing comes in your comfort zone. Like,
no,
to
only
be,
comfort.
yeah, to be, it's going to feel uncomfortable. I remember releasing my book, it's like when I said to myself, right, I'm going to get this pro card, even that was like, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable here, because you're doing things that to take that level up. You're doing things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, that make you feel scared. And then you go back to, like, for me, I go back to the old version of me and think who I was previously. And I'm like, I don't want her to creep in again. Like, I don't want her to come back, because I've kind of rebuilt that person, that be that sad, unhappy, person who really hated herself. But, it's almost like that's where that imposter syndrome creeps in again. And, it's, you have to push it to the side and be like, no,
I want to come back to that, because that's really interesting. That idea that that person, because you talk about that moment on stage where you had all those doubts and you had all those fears, and the same with your book, and the same with all the amazing things that you've done, I'm sure. But there was two things that you said when you were talking about your experience in 2018, and there was something you said about like having to realize that you didn't need to know everything that happened. And I think that is so important, because when we're doing that, when we're obsessing over details like that, it's a form of procrastination. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, because it sounds like I'm saying, like, you were procrastinating over that, but it's a massive thing. But the point I'm making is that once you realize that you don't need to know everything that happens, the anxiety lessens, because it's that fear of the unknown. It's that, oh my god, all this stuff happened to me and I don't remember it. Like, what does that mean? And while you're focusing on that, you're not focusing on what you want. So I think that was a huge lesson for you, a massive lesson.
Huge. And it held me back, I'd say, by about a year, because actually, it's like anyone who's going into the new year, 2023, the best advice I would give them is, to stop thinking, stop procrastinating. You don't need to know it all. You don't need to be perfect. It's okay to struggle. Like, it's okay to go through that journey.
It's necessary.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm going in, I got big goals again for 2023.
I want to hear about this.
So it's almost like, but that is already my heart. It's like, whoa, okay. Yeah. And I've said it out loud a few times.
I'm going to get you to say it on the podcast, recorded conversation.
I'll be like, oh. But, I have to go through all of that again, that uncomfortableness, that uncomfortable feeling, to get to where I want to be. It's and I think that anybody who's kind of thinking, I have to know everything, I have to do this, just focus on taking action. Like, focus on taking baby steps, small steps, because really it's a bit like you mentioned about my daughters and working out with my daughters. That's all I did, like, just baby steps every day. Then I added in, like, the gym. Then I think we've spoken about it before, but then I looked at alcohol, and that's a whole other story, and how that kind of impacted my mental health, my nutrition, like, just it's the same with anything. If you want to build a business, or you want to change your body, or you want a new career, you just need to take those small steps rather than trying to climb a mountain, because all everybody sees is the end product.
Yeah.
They see the journey.
I love that.
through. Every successful person we know has gone through that.
And that's why there's a little club almost of people are like, yeah, rolling their eyes like, yeah, that's all part of it.
Yeah.
The fact that you spent a long time avoiding it is what was the problem.
Yeah. What, I avoided it.
Yeah. Alcohol helps with that.
Yeah. And I remember saying this time last year, and I said it to my posing coach as well. This is like a funny story, because I was terrible at posing. Like, you know, this is part of competing. You can have the best physique ever, but you've got to be able to pose. It was all right standing in the heels, but oh my God, just getting a routine together. And actually, when you've got PTSD, remembering it, remember it. Like, because of, you know, I do sometimes experience a bit of memory loss still. And I struggled to retain information. And what was crazy is the more I worked on that this year, it was like I got on the stage and just did. And it's like anything. I guess it's a dance routine, or, you know, if you practice something daily, practice habits, practice taking small steps, you remember it. It's like it's a bit like muscle memory, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that when I was training, I always wanted to compete. That's what stopped me. Like the posing bit, like the training bit, the eating bit, that was okay. But the idea of that, like when I realized what it was, I was like, nah.
You know, it is so much harder than it looks.
Oh, it really is. It really is.
Honest to God, you know, and I think that's the thing. Overcoming that. It wasn't the standing on stage with it. I mean, God, that is overwhelming. You get up there and literally these lights just are in your face, and I'm walking out for the first time and being like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this.
It's so brave. It's so brave.
So overwhelming. And then I think then once I kind of like had done the first few shows, I was like, right, I want to get back out there again. It was almost like next year, I'm desperate to get out there and do it again.
That's amazing. That's such a transformation. And I mean, I love what you said earlier on about like it being in phases, because there's going to be a lot of people that in January or the new year have New Year's resolutions to lose weight, and they will take away loads of stuff from themselves. No alcohol, no chocolate, no sugar, no this, no that. And then they'll introduce all these new, really difficult, like unpracticed habits. And in a sense, and I don't like to speak negatively, I think anyone could do whatever they believe they can, but I think sometimes you have to give yourself a fair shot. And it's like you said, like there, like I started training in my living room, and once I got around that, which I think what you mean is once you establish that habit, once that habit became something that you were like, right, this is part of my life now, I can do it, that's when you looked at the next thing. Because if you try and do too much at once, first of all, you don't know what's working. Second of all, it's too hard. It's too much. You're asking yourself to be a completely different person overnight, and it's not often achievable.
And I think that's where, going back to what we talked about, fear of failure, a lot of fun that happens because, and I've done it, we put too much on ourselves, unrealistic goals, unrealistic expectations, but we also give ourselves all these habits to change all at once. And I think for everybody that's coming into the new year, you know, I would say to people, focus on some simple things that are going to change your life, you know, whether that's increasing your movement, you know, with a better step count, you know, drinking some more water, you know,
which is massive. People underestimate that water thing. It's like super important. I mean, I know a good book about that. I think it's called Build Habits for Women, I think.
So within that, you know, I kind of wrote that book to really help women to change their habits, because I think that I was that woman who was jumping on the New Year train now. I mean, Johnny, I did it for years and years, where it was like, right, new year, new me. I'd clear the house of every bit of what I called bad food. You know, and then I would like literally go into January restriction. It never worked. I always failed. And I might have dropped too much. I might have dropped a few, but I did the same cycle over again. You can commit to, you know, maybe 4 or 5 things, and actually it's all about sticking to those and consistency, and kind of realizing what's holding you back is, I'm going to give examples of things that are in the book. Well, I've always been this way. I don't have time, you know, all that procrastination. Well, you know, I've got children, so they come first. I've got a busy life. Well, you know, I've always dieted. I've always done Slimming World. So I mentioned that particular.
We're just big in our family, stuff like that. Yeah.
I think the reason that I wrote the book to help others is I used to do it myself.
Yeah.
I would say, oh well, I've got children. You know, I don't have time, or I just can't lose weight. You know, oh, I'll never be toned. And again, that's all limiting self-beliefs. That's
like,
all.
You would never say that to your children.
No.
Never say. Very often, that's the tool I use with other people, because it's so funny to me, right? You meet somebody who's kind, who's generous, who's a really good person, and they're being so unkind about themselves, saying like horrendous things, like are difficult to hear. And then you say to them, what would you tell a friend? And they go, oh, I would tell them this and I would tell them that. And I say, oh, sounds like good advice. Yeah, but it's different for me. Is it? You know?
And I think that's a great point, what you said. And I have, you know, women, and because I was that woman, I have women come to me who will say they hate themselves, they hate what they see in the mirror, you know, useless, you know, and I identify with all of that because I would call myself those things. I would call myself those names. And I think it was a result of always, this is before, you know, Freya was born and before I had PTSD. I just, you know, was always on that diet train. I was kind of like always punishing myself with you know, exercise, food, restricting.
But listen to the word punishing workout, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Burning workout.
Yeah.
Searching for, you know, the latest fat burning, you know, workout. And I know that no one wants to really hear it, especially like this time of year, but consistency is like the magic. It is like the secret, but it's building those habits and changing those habits over time, a bit like we said, you know.
I love hearing you say that. I really do.
Because I think we want everything now, don't we?
And that's the problem.
We live in a world, don't we, where it's all like fast fixes, fast this, that. But do you know what? Mentally and physically, if you can invest in yourself daily and just take small steps, like you'll reap the rewards. It's just a case of knowing that everyone's gone through that journey. I think it's easy to put your phone on and be like, oh, that person seems perfect every day. They're not.
No, they're not. You're right. And that's it. Like when you work with lots of people, you see that consistently, and it's almost like the veil is lifted. And I mean, something really strikes me now, obviously, for the people that aren't watching on YouTube, you're like, on YouTube? But there's a mirror behind you. And I just got this vision of you looking in the mirror daily, year after year, being so unkind to yourself, telling yourself what you hate about yourself and that you want to change how you look because you hate the way you look. And I remember when I worked as a PT, I would say to people all the time, you know, if you think you're going to make a positive change in your life based off of the fact that you hate yourself, that's not going to hold. That's not going to be the motivation, because I think one of the big things here is motivation. And what I loved is at the beginning somewhere you said, you know, it wasn't about how you looked. It was about you wanted to feel better. And I think there can't be a better motivation than that. And exercise will certainly do that as long as you don't go too hard on it. But I think the first step has to be, and I think after what you went through, I would believe that would certainly accomplish that, is there needs to be a level of acceptance first. And people say, well, how can you say that I need to accept myself in order to change myself? And I say to them all the time, it's like loving the job that you do, but just wanting to get paid a bit more money for it, you know? And I love the idea that it's like you accepted who you was, you wanted to make some changes, and that was okay, but you didn't hate yourself, you know, at that point, that before you did, and it didn't work. So if we take that as a snapshot, you spent years and years and years getting on the new year, new you train, hating yourself, wanting to change yourself because you hated yourself, and that didn't work. But as soon as you accepted who you was and you said, right, forget all that, that's fine, but I just want to feel better. Look what happened. You know,
if anyone can stop, and I get it, like I get aesthetically that people want to change, I get that, I do. But you know what, when you feel better, honestly, I could bottle that. I could bottle that, like I could take that feeling that I have on a day-to-day basis of how I feel versus how I felt on that constant diet train, constantly looking for the magic solution, like punishing, like restricting, hating myself, not being able to put clothes on because I hated how I looked. I wouldn't go out sometimes, whereas now I'm in a bodybuilding phase, where we call it progressive or growth or build phase. Yeah. Okay. So we have to do that, but I'll never not, I'll quite comfortably go and get a bigger size out of the wardrobe, because that's part of the end goal that I'm working towards for next year. We have to go through that phase, but I'd never treat myself like that now. I'd never say those kind of unkind things to myself. But I had to constantly, I suppose, work on things like positive affirmations, work making those daily steps and those habits, making those habits like ingrained almost, built into my life, so that it just becomes, like brushing your teeth. And this is what people need to think, right? You wouldn't not show up at work, okay? You wouldn't not brush your teeth, or you mentioned about your children, Johnny. Like, there's things we would do for our children. So why do we neglect ourselves or health and fitness and, or our diet, nutrition as like not an investment? It's just viewing yourself in a different way, like taking care of yourself to feel better, rather than that obsession with how you look, because how you look is going to be a byproduct.
It's also conditioning. We've been conditioned to believe that we have to look a certain way, which is ridiculous, because we're all different heights, we're all different shapes, we're all different colors. So where is this perfect person? I've not met them yet.
Well, this is just what you just said. That's really funny, because I was searching for perfection as well. And that's why when I touched on it, remove perfection, and that all, right? Yeah, just get rid of it, because what is perfection anyway?
Because I could go really crazy, right? And I could get this amazing body and I could get all this stuff, right? Yeah. And then I won't be someone's cup of tea. Well, then that's not perfection, then, is it?
and actually, also, this is a funny story, and I have to say this because your listeners need to know. Like, people think that being lean and having abs is going to make you happy. Well, I can tell, from a stage competitor's point of view, not only do I hate it, I think looks like, personally, I struggle with how I look at the end, but it's the end goal, and that's what's required.
You're competing.
But, it's not going to make you happy. Like, I'm happy competing because it's a challenge. Yeah, the end look and the end result is not a sustainable long-term lifestyle.
And that's when you get all the photos taken, right?
Do you know what? I 8 to 10 weeks before, I like that before part. The same, of course, I'm really proud of, but I'm not the one who's like ab check this, that, and I think it's really important to keep it real, because a lot of people do. But I've had a huge amount of photo shoots in the condition I'm in now. I'm at my most happiest. So,
but you can see it in you as well. Like, you seem like really like just engaged and
strong, lifting heavy, like lots of food. What's not to love?
There you go. There's something else that you mentioned earlier on when you were sharing your story with us, and that was the idea that you validated your emotions. Now, I have this belief, and it's come from multiple years of doing things a different way and then trying different things and failing and all sorts of things. But emotional regulation is the key to it all. And what I mean by that is, firstly, when it comes to emotional regulation obviously means that you're monitoring it, or you're tracking it, or you're evolving with it. But first and foremost, what people are not very practiced at is actually knowing what emotion they're experiencing. And I loved what you said at the beginning, when you said, then I just had to admit how I felt.
Yeah.
I just had to just say, like, this is how I feel. Like, and and you also said it a few times, it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
And it's like we do this thing as human beings, right? Where we feel a certain way, we know we do, but we tell ourselves a few things. One, we shouldn't feel that way, which is
Yeah.
not your thinking, it's somebody else's. And it's wrong to feel that way.
Yeah.
And that, that we need to move away from it. So then you tell everyone else that you don't feel that way. You're trying to convince yourself that you don't feel that way. But there's one major factor that we're neglecting. We do feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important.
And even for the person that you see as or view as always having it together all the time, because I have this from a lot of women. They're like, but you always seem like you have it all together. And I'm like, no, not like, obviously my clients I share, so much with, but not all the time, because we all have days where we feel like it's harder. Sometimes that workout, I don't really want to go, but this is between motivation and discipline. I know you're going to ask me something about that. And I used to be that person, going back to the woman who did the New Year, New Me. And I hear it a lot, especially from potential clients or women that, message me. I'm just not motivated. Well, the thing is, and this is where I can, I guess, draw an experience. I was not motivated. Yeah. I think that I used to use that excuse myself a lot. Well, I'm just not motivated. I just don't feel like it. But actually, when I worked out the difference between motivation and discipline and realized that sometimes showing up for myself would make me feel better. And that was for me always the goal, was to feel better. But showing up and having discipline, it's a bit like we wouldn't not show up for work, right? We would not show up for a client if you're self-employed. We wouldn't not go to our kids, I don't know, Christmas play or take something they love. We'd have the discipline to do that for others, because
that's a really good example, because there's so many opportunities and times when, if we're being honest, as parents, we do things for our children and we just don't want to, and we're a little bit pissed off about it, but we're going to do it because we have to, because we want to make it. But then when we see that moment where our kids smile, like I saw this thing on TikTok the other day, and it was there was a bunch of kids singing on stage, and there was one kid just looking around like this, and looked like that she wasn't going to be able to find her parents, and then she saw her parents, and her face, I was like, I can't watch that. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, I honestly, well, we had like a Christmas carol concert. Oh, and Evie got asked to go and sing in the local shopping centre, and she hadn't said, "Oh, Mum, like come." But I checked my work diary and I was like, right, I'm going to go down just for 20 minutes and watch her sing. And I turned up, and she was like, oh my God, my mum's here. And that's the thing, when we talk about, discipline, it might be doing things that we don't think we have time to do, or, we don't really want to do. Sometimes it's things, that we're like, oh God, we've got to take the kids to that. But it's important to recognise that, we're doing that for them. So why would we have that discipline for ourselves?
That is just what you're saying there is like, like I used that analogy of that little girl and her face lighting up, and what it shows is the importance of you showing up as a parent. So if we take that analogy and we apply it to ourselves, like you just said, it's the importance of showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
And say to yourself every day, all right, okay, Johnny. Like I remember when I used to do, I had such busy days at one point where only time I could fit my workouts in was at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So I made a thing out of it. Truth, I hated it. I hated it. I did not want to get out of bed every day. I could have swore, I could have kicked the dog, and I don't kick the dog. I made that clear. And yeah, you got to say that. But I used to have to put all my gym kit outside the door of my bedroom. I had to fill my water bottle up the night before, because I swear to you, and if I couldn't find some socks, I'd get back in bed.
Listen, I have this with clients, and I joke about what I do on prep. So same as you, but like 5 it is normally for me.
It's not a competition.
It's like it's only because I have to go twice.
That's a hard phase as well.
Oh, I'd lay it all out ready, and a bit like you, I'd be like, seriously, I've put the wrong thing out, or that doesn't go, but I'd be like, you got to go, just go and get it done, you know.
There you are in the gym training in your slippers.
Well, I once went in my coat. I'm not even going to lie to you, because I was so cold, it was like, because that no one tells you that being lean might all look like fun and games, but you're hungry, tired, cold, miserable.
Oh,
And
torture.
I was like, couldn't even take my coat off. Not fun.
So, I mean, I'm gonna hit the questions now.
Yeah.
I mean, we've only been going for 40 minutes. It's fine. But like, you know, I suppose what I would love to achieve by talking to you today is that, you know, I've met so many people that, let's say, they will listen to this conversation. They'll feel inspired. They'll think it's really cool. They'll think it's amazing. They'll probably think the world of you, which they should, but they won't do the important bit. And that's go ahead and try, you know? So that might come from somebody going, oh, you know, that horrible saying, it's all right for them. You know, we always hear it, you know, like, it's all right for you. It wasn't all right for me in 2018. You know, what I'm trying to get to is, you described your most challenging moments as rock bottom. You know, on your website, it says that you hit rock bottom. How did that feel?
Lonely, dark. Like, for me, I couldn't see a way out. I felt so alone, ashamed, a failure. I felt like there were so many triggers and warning signs in the lead up to like the place where I needed to get help, and I kind of ignored them for so long. So there was a level of guilt that I hadn't kind of asked for help sooner, mainly for my children. I felt like a failure as a mother. I mentioned it earlier. I felt, you know, I'm kind of ungrateful, really, that, you know, I'd gone through 2 pregnancy losses. I'd lost 2 children, but I was unhappy. But what I kind of couldn't process is that something huge had happened. You know, I'd had gone through almost like an experience that not many people go through in their lifetime. And I think that I can look back and I know that all that guilt, all of how I felt, it was normal. It was normal to feel all of those things, all of that hurt. I was angry as well, you know, that kind of, I wanted Freya so much, but I'd gone through such an awful time having her, which then did impact those early days, those newborn days, you know, the baby phase, because I do look back on that and I do have very poor memory of it. I've got loads of photos and things like that. But as soon as I started to take steps to get help from being at my lowest of the low, I started very slowly to see the light again. And I think that, you know, it's easy to say, oh, I wish I'd done it like straight away, but I don't think I really, you know, was fully aware of the extent of how much it affected me, you know, so much. It was so, you know.
And you wouldn't be able to. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That's really vulnerable, and difficult to hear, because I have like empathy for that greatly. It's a hard place to be, but I think I've identified over time that quite a lot of the time, the pain and discomfort comes from the resistance of what you were going through. You were you were feeling a certain way, and that's why I brought up that validation of how you actually feel in your emotions, because it's only then when you go, I'm really not doing well. I am in a really bad, I'm concerned about myself. I have to admit this to myself now because I'm feeling so low. And people don't feel like they're allowed to say that to themselves, let alone anybody else. And I had a conversation with a new client the other day, and she said something so profound and so true, and it gives me goosebumps just thinking about the way she said it. We were doing some walking and talking together, and that's the way she prefers it. And she just got so angry and animated and passionate, and she said, you know what? I've been through so many hard things, and everyone tells you in the mental health space now that you must talk, you must talk, you must talk. And then she said, who the hell is listening? And I thought, wow. Who the hell is listening? Because a lot of the time when you talk to people, you have to put a trigger warning on it. And there's certain things you can't say in certain ways, and there's certain things that will get judged if you say them the wrong way. And then we're all surprised that we're not being able to validate how we really feel. It's because no one's willing to listen, you know. And that's what's so important. It's like, I feel really strongly about it. There was there's a chap I saw it on TikTok the other day. I forget his name now, but an American dancer.
Oh,
Yeah, and he committed
okay.
suicide, and there was loads of videos of
Oh,
him just dancing with his family, smiling. It broke me. I hated to see that because
yeah.
everyone thought he was okay, but he wasn't. So they're like, "Oh, I wish you could have spoke. I wish you could have spoke out." Well, think about it. He didn't. And why do you think that is?
Yeah.
It's because no one's there to hear it.
No one was there to hear it. But I think also, going back to what we were saying earlier, everything seemed okay, didn't it? You saw him dancing. He seemed to have a happy family life.
Horrible to see that.
Absolutely horrendous, like similar age as well, I think, to us, just.
I just saw his wife and his kids, and I thought them kids are going to be affected by that for the rest of their life. And that just makes me so sad. It really does.
And I think that when you are at that point where you are so low, and I was so low, and I'm going to be really honest, like my children were the thing that stopped me from doing something like that, because you have to always truly remember that there is something to live for. There is something that things can get better. Like I remember sitting there thinking, is this it? Is this how I'm going to feel all the time? And I think, like what you said earlier, you have to. I actually I think masked my feelings, and probably a bit like what he did. He was clearly masking, not showing how he truly felt.
Yeah.
And that for so long, because I had a newborn baby, then she was getting a bit older, and it was almost like, come on, Kirstie, you need to get over this.
Even that though, that statement, like, well, that's a lot of pressure when you feel the way you did.
And I think even now, now to this day, I will talk about my emotions. I'll express them. I'll say to myself, it's okay. You're not feeling great today, and that's okay. That's fine.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Because because that's kind of normal to way.
More people need to say that, because everyone thinks that like they're feeling rubbish, they're feeling the way you did, and then they go, for some bizarre reason, we all do it, we go on social media and look at all the perfect people. It's like, what's wrong with us?
And that's actually, I know we're going to talk about this, but comparison. Fear of failure, comparison, and your belief system. But have you ever heard that saying, like I saw you see this lovely post on Facebook, don't you? Or you think, oh, it's got the perfect this and that. And I remember doing a birthday party for one of the girls and thinking I'd done like a great job as a mum. And then I saw someone had done X, and I was like, oh man, like I didn't do that. But now I would never feel like that.
Yeah.
But to anyone who feels that way, just remember that social media is like a snapshot in time. Comparing life to somebody else's is only ever, it's thief of joy. Like comparison is the thief of joy, and actually it takes away from who you are and the unique person you are, and
which matters.
It
matters. You are the only person that can be, do, act, and just be the person that you are. And that comparison is a killer. Like I say all the time, like I laugh with clients and I say, like, and I'll ask you, Kirstie, how many times have you had an argument with your husband, paused to take a selfie? I've never done it with my wife, so therefore we only put the best bits online. That's it, and that makes sense. Why would we put, like I've got a mate who said I've never, imagine if I just went to the toilet and took a photo of that. It's like this is where it's headed, right? It's just like we're sharing everything, we get to post once or twice a day. Now we're on stories and people are telling you where they are and where they shop and where they go and all these different things.
What they're doing.
And it's fun and it's great, but I think again we're creating a next level of illusion, which plays into that ultimate conditioning that you should be, act, and have this certain life a certain way. And if you haven't got that you're automatically a failure.
And that's so spot on, because people, they then feel, but it's almost a case of, that the more you can remove yourself, it's great to be inspired or admire people online, like
absolutely.
it really, but the more you can remove yourself from allowing that to hold you back, because I think that's something I did for a huge amount, you know, particularly when I first started as a personal trainer. It was almost like I'd be looking at what every personal trainer was doing and thinking, oh, I should be the same, or I should do this. But actually, when you step into your authentic, unique version of you, and if that is a little bit messed up, you know, and completely perfect, that's okay, because you can bring them on that journey with you. But also sharing, you know, that vulnerability, sharing, you know, who you really are is really important. You know, I know for me that it's so many women like identify because there's not always the best bits. Of course, there's where I am, but I'll try really hard to keep sharing who I was, because it's important.
Yeah, and I think you give something to people that is invaluable. Like it's probably the most important thing you can give anybody, and that is hope.
Yeah,
you provide hope. You somebody can sit and they can talk to you. It's like I hear a lot of people say to me, oh, Johnny, you just don't understand. And I say, oh, I've got some understanding. I might not understand completely how you feel, and I wouldn't dream to try, but I've been through something similar. I can have empathy for that. Now, that doesn't mean that the solution's the same. I'm not telling you that I've got the solution. You're not saying, hey, girls, this is the way you do it. What I love about the way you approach things is that, and it's evident from what you've said previously in this conversation, is that you're trying to ascertain who this person is before you can help them. Because as a coach, what I understand is that if I meet any coaches that feel that they have the answer for somebody else, I automatically think, oh dear. Because I can tell you now, the only person that has the answer, things for you did not change until you stood up and said, right, I feel crap. I feel terrible. This is how I feel. I'm very clear about that. I'm aware of how I feel. Now, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because you're the only one that can. And that sucks. It's hard. You know, you want someone to give you a tablet or some sort of secret magic advice, but that's not life.
Yeah. And that's a great point that you've made, because as we go into that, like January, we can't ignore it, the 2023 new year, you me, you hold the answer inside you. Like you have power. The 8-week shred, the 12-week plan, the PT that's promising you the miracle solution, or whether it's a diet company or whoever it is, it might work. Yeah. I'm not saying it might not work, but actually your long term, what you're looking for long term to kind of establish that habit change, that behavior change, all of it's inside you. You can still have, of course, I have a coach. I've had coaches for years, and they help to mentor, support, empower you. But ultimately, you have to take back that power and control yourself and take action.
Accountability.
Absolutely.
Accountability. I always say it with my clients that got the 4 A's of behavioral change, which is awareness, first knowing what the problem is and how you feel about it and all those different things. Then it's accountability. What can I take accountability for? Not blame. It's not your fault or all that sort of stuff. It's just about saying, okay, what can I actually do here? And then there's acceptance. What can't I do? What's not my responsibility? What can I not change? I need to let go of that. And then the last one is always the one that people skip. That's action. Do something.
So true. So true.
You have to do something.
The action is the most important part, isn't it? And I would say to people as well, don't be frightened of it being a little bit imperfect. I always joke with my clients, I might have showed up and it wasn't completely perfect. It's not going to be every time. But if you go, like what you just said about your A's, if you accept that, move forward rather than dwell on it. Because as humans, why do we do that? Why do we always dwell on, well, it's before
rumination?
It's never worked before, so why is it going to work again?
But what you just said is the answer to the sort of the antidote to limiting beliefs. So you sit there and you collect all of the ways in which things have failed and gone wrong in the past. So if that works for failure, then surely it would work for success too. So let's have a look at all the things that we've done really well in the past, and all the things that we're proud of, and all the things, because I'm sorry, but people don't get to any age in life without some successes. Even a baby learns to walk. You know what I mean? That's a success, right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine as a baby, if you're like, I don't know, you see somebody I don't know, 20, and it's like, oh, you don't walk. Yeah, I just, it wasn't for me. I tried it a couple of times, fell over. I was like, nah, I'm not doing it.
It's so true. Like it's so funny because like what we said about our children, we're always praising our children or like, you know, like proud of their success. But then I know people that will share numerous pictures of their children and how proud they are, but they won't even put them, they won't take a photo without digitally editing it or Snapchat filter on it because they hate themselves that much, you know.
Mate, that's the first thing I notice when I have clients and they have like social media. I'll look on their social media, and if I see no pictures of them, I'm like, right, okay, I know what I'm dealing with now.
And that's how I was. Like it was all about the children, the kids. And then even when I came into like the PT world, it was like, oh my God, like I wouldn't have wanted professional photos taken, all these kind of things that would have made me feel uncomfortable. But I think that again, it's that, you know, that they're kind of like holding themselves back, holding all those barriers, you know, back and not actually expressing how they really feel and kind of hiding behind, you know, it's like hiding behind a mask, isn't it? You know, if you.
And again, it comes down to that fear that you spoke about earlier, just being scared of firstly the unknown, because there's something that I'm sure you've learned, I've learned, and that is that we don't know what's going to happen.
No,
we never do. And this, like, people talk about anxiety and they say, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And the first lesson I try to install in people is actually you never know what's going to happen.
You never know.
Ever. Like when you said to Zoe that don't bother videoing it, I haven't won this, and then you won it. And it's just like, well, there you go.
And that for somebody that's, you know, I should be, you know, a lot more confident in my own ability and who I am as a person, and I am. But that doesn't mean that old imposter syndrome, that those old limiting self-beliefs don't creep up. And, you know, and I would say that to anybody, you know, don't allow that to hold you back, because, you know, it's kind of like when I went into this year, like competing, I said to my posing coach, like, we're just going to go for it. Like, let's do everything that makes me feel uncomfortable. It was almost.
I love that.
And I said, but I'm going to tell you when I feel uncomfortable. And there were moments like I'm like walking, and it kind of became second nature because it was just a daily thing. And then by the time I got to, you know, getting on stage, it was like, yeah, this is just a lot more natural now. You know, I'm a lot happier and a lot more comfortable. But it was still scary, you know, it was still like frightening to do that. And I think that it's things that people need to kind of embrace that uncomfortable feeling, because what used to make me feel uncomfortable 4 years ago, like I said about getting in the car and going to my PT course, I wouldn't even think about that now. You know, I would just get in the car and go. But that provided me with so much anxiety just showing up and being there. Fast forward 4 years, you know, that would be nothing now. And that's what people need to think.
Yeah.
Those things that are making you feel anxious now, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's starting a new job, whether that's building a new career, whatever it is, it will in time feel like your new normal almost, you know.
That's what's important, right? That's exactly what you just said. It's about realizing that you're evolving. And also it's about making friends. Instead, like a lot of people, they demonize the old version of themselves. They say how much they don't like them. They say and the thing is, what they're not hearing in that statement is it's a part of them. And to me, it's about making friends of that. If you take it as, imagine you took away, and this might be dangerous territory here, but imagine if you took away that old version of yourself and replaced it with your husband. Yeah, right. No, I know, dangerous, right? But like, imagine he's saying all those things to you, right? Why is he saying that? He's saying it not because he's a bad person. He's saying that because he's scared that you're going to fail, and he knows how you take failure, and he doesn't want you to fail. He doesn't want you to feel all them horrible feelings. He's trying to protect you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that people miss out on, is that old version of themselves was just scared and was acting like a scared person, which means they were trying to stop you from making mistakes. So actually, instead of demonizing them and saying, hey, I hate that old version of myself, it's more about saying, thank you Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm all right. And it's like again, we're using the analogy of the children. Your children are going to say to you, oh, mum, I can't do this on sports day. I can't do that. So-and-so's faster than me. So-and-so's stronger than me. And you're not going to go, yeah, you're right. Sack it off. You're never going to say that, are you? You know, but yet we do it to ourselves.
You'd never, to your child, you would say something like, you can only do your best, you know.
And that's good enough.
And that's good enough, you know, and that's what we need to tell ourselves, like, more, I think. Because I always say, like, fear and doubt kills more dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Like anything. It really does. And if you can, you know, just take those small steps every day. And sometimes we think it's other people that are judging, have an opinion, right?
Yeah.
But it's that little voice in our head that's saying, what if I can't do it? What if I don't make it? What if good enough? And you have to tell that little voice, I absolutely, excuse my language, I effing can, you know, like I do this.
Do you know what I'm really interested in? Next time you're, because you've got a big year this year by the sound of it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got planned and holding you accountable. but like at some point during this year, when you step out of your comfort zone yet again, you're gonna have that old limiting belief version of yourself, that old version of yourself that tries to step in and protect you. What are you gonna say to that version of yourself?
I'm literally just gonna tell her that, you know, that she can do one, because you know, but ultimately I'm grateful that I was her. I guess that I learned so much from being her. I learned so much of how I don't want to feel, how I don't want to think.
Love it.
I know that I don't have to feel every day is a struggle. I don't have to feel miserable, unhappy. And I think also I was quite, you know, quite bitter and jealous of other people's success. Like I won't lie to you, Johnny. Like, you know, I would have been that woman that would have kind of looked at the perfect life or picture and thought, how's she got it all? Like, why, you know?
Do you ever worry that people look at you like that?
I know it happens. Yeah.
Oh, does it? Do you get people saying silly stuff?
Yeah, it's probably, I think it kind of comes with the territory. I think as soon as you, I think
I get a lot of racism, believe it or not.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's just, I just don't understand.
Well, I'm not even going to waste my time trying. It's not my problem, it's theirs. I wonder though, what would it be like, instead of telling yourself to do one, what would it be like to say, thank you, but I'm all right?
Yeah, it's a good statement, definitely.
Think it would work though?
I think
You're like, no, she needs to go right now.
I'm kind of like, I think because I'm better to say to myself, no, you leave now, almost. It did creep up a bit in July, and she kind of was there, a bit like that moment that I mentioned to you about, you know, backstage, and then I had to kind of push her away again. And you have to almost say thanks for the lessons, almost, but I'm good,
but
I'm
now. Yeah that's really lovely, actually, just to be like, so what I hear is like, I hate the idea that there's a part of you that you're not validating, but I don't think that's what's happened. And I think you're basically just saying at that moment, like, listen, I ain't got time for you right now. Like, I got stuff to do.
Stuff to do, because, and actually what you've just said there hits the nail on the head, because I used to spend so much time procrastinating, holding myself back, thinking, am I good enough, thinking, can I do this? It was so much time wasted. Whereas as soon as I stopped that and focused on taking action and moving forward, everything then started to change for me. You know,
focus on growth. You know?
It was all about focusing on growth personally, you know, bringing clients, like bringing women with me. And that's when things started to move, you know, move forward, because the more you kind of sit there and go, well, what if? Well, it's never going to change, is it? It's not.
No. Well, I mean, that's a really perfect segue, because obviously you were kind enough to share that real vulnerable, how you felt at your lowest. And you, as I said before, you described it as rock bottom. So that could have gone, and touch wood, and thank God, it could have gone many different directions, that situation. And I think that's what you're alluding to, isn't it? In some ways.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It went this direction. So
Yeah.
in order for it to go there, and everybody's journey is different, you know, how Kirstie managed it might not be the way that you need to manage it, but there will be some wisdom in there. What happened? Yeah, how did you make that change? How did you start that shift towards being at rock bottom to being like, I love the fact that you were at rock bottom at 2018, but yet 2022 you got most motivational athlete. That's just insane.
It is.
I don't even know what to say about that. It's just amazing.
I think that so many things. What I mean, obviously I've already mentioned I got help, which was so important, and nothing for anybody to feel ashamed of, because I think that I needed that, and I needed to go through a grieving process. And also the key thing was, you know, I qualified as a PT. I actually made that step to start that. And I guess the thing before I qualified, was probably starting to lift weights, because I'd always used exercise as punishment, or like to lose weight, or, you know, it was always about dieting rather than what's going on in my head. And lifting weights, I can't explain it in the way of how it like made me feel to start. I guess I felt like, you know, a different person when I started to learn how to deadlift, you know. And people always, I always joke now, people are like, why is your back how it is? I'm like, because I just love deadlifting, you know. I was like, I wasn't a typical bodybuilder. I just enjoyed lifting weights, and it made me feel good. It made me, you know, harness that, you know, negative energy, and I'd come out and feel a different person. So I guess, you know, that was kind of the start. And then obviously qualifying as a PT, and then being able to help other people made me feel good. You know, it made me feel good, but I still had a huge amount of imposter syndrome, limiting self-beliefs. In my first year as a PT, I still, you know, was working through like my own issues, I guess, you know, my own mental health issues. And I think that what I would say to somebody who is like rock bottom is to start with one day kind of at a time, like building each brick. So I always think of like, you start the foundations and then you're building those bricks, you know, until you know, have the house or the life, or, you know, whatever it is that you want, the body, how you want to feel in your head, that you get to that place you want to feel. But even then, now I still want to put some bricks on, you know. Even in 2022, a successful year, there was a lot of things I had to go through last year when I competed and it didn't go so well, and that really did mentally affect me.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
But I kind of had to reflect, you know, review what happened, like, and actually go, do you know what? It's okay, it didn't work out. And again, what we talked about earlier, like validating your emotions, your feelings, saying it didn't, you know, quite go for me how I wanted, but what needs to change? What do I need to do differently? Like, what actually?
What a great question.
We don't ask ourselves that enough, right?
No, you're right. You're right.
We blame, we put blame. It would be easy for me to have blamed somebody else, or blame, but ultimately the responsibility and the accountability lies with yourself, you know.
Which is hard to accept, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You know, I think that you have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do differently next time to achieve what I want to achieve. And again, that wasn't an overnight thing. You know, I started posing January, so we're talking a year now, it's coming up to. I did 6 months of posing for those shows. This time I'm not competing until autumn 2023. I'm starting even earlier.
Yeah.
Take that level up and compete as a pro I've got to bring something really special. You know,
I love the fact that that was your goal. Now it's your foundation. I think that's amazing.
set those foundations, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to take that next level up, you then have to do something else, you know, to get there. But I think quick to kind of be like, well, so and so got this, so and so got that, you know, but they put the work in, like they work in, and
people just want to say, oh, they're lucky, but they don't see, like I said, the broken glass, the thorns, the fire. They don't see all that. They only see the end result. You literally standing on stage looking amazing, and they don't know all the times that you've had to say to the girls, no, I can't. And you've had to say to your family, you can't, no roast dinners and a bottle of wine on Sunday this week or whatever, But I mean, just to go over it again, because I think it's so important, like, especially coming from someone like yourself who is really living it. It's your first step from rock bottom was, first of all, to get help, then validate how you felt, how you were really feeling, and allow that to be okay. You then took on a purpose.
Yeah.
And through that whole process, you were facing all of those things that you were scared of. You were facing your fears. That's just fantastic. That really is.
And I think for anybody who is like frightened and they might have a dream, like it sounds silly, but even when I was in my retail days, really loved fitness. You know, obviously I didn't have the right approach to it in the sense of there was too much cardio punishment and dieting, but I always loved fitness. I was terrified of lifting weights. Like I was your classic, I'm going to look like Arnie. I mean, we know really impossible.
It's really not that easy. I'm just saying.
Honestly, building muscle, I'll tell you what, I need to get it in there naturally, is hard. Like it is hard. Like
it's really hard.
Woman, you're never gonna.
You just don't have the testosterone, like, for a start.
Exactly. Enough.
Yeah.
It's just. So you're never. I think I was that person who was always like, "Oh my god, I'm going to lift a weight and I'm going to be like."
Just going to look at one and get massive. I was like, okay, well, could you tell me how to do it? Because
I think it's kind of, I always loved fitness, but I always wanted to do something in fitness as a career. But even then, like in my early 20s, I was just scared. I had that like fear. So to actually go and do the course, qualify, was like, wow, what a moment, because it was hard, to then start in that industry, because I was so proud, but I didn't know what I was doing. Of course I was qualified, but when you
that's the best moment of a PT. They come out qualified and don't feel like they know anything.
No. I mean, your sagittal plane and planes and axes of
and then you realize that none of that matters to the client.
No.
They don't care. They just want to lose weight. They care.
About whether a squat is in this plane of movement.
That's it. They don't care. But a lot of trainers fall into that trap, don't they? It's almost like when they put out content, say, they're not really talking to clients, they're talking to their peers, and it's like almost like a bit of competition. But do you know what? I'm so grateful. We've been going for a while now, so we're probably gonna have to wrap it up. But I just want to highlight that, there'll be some people that come on and listen to this, and they might be looking for fitness tips, advice, and stuff like that. And you might notice that Kirstie hasn't really done that. But what she has done is she's dealt with the real problems. Because the thing is, doing exercise, believe it or not, just comes down to repetition, practice, consistency, getting good advice from somebody else. And that, in a sense, is simple and easy to do in this modern day world. For example, you're putting a lot of content out on how to do things and things like that. And there's many, many others. But actually, that's not the problem. The problem is what's holding us back. And if you really listen to this, maybe listen to it a few times, listen to what Kirstie's saying, listen to the things that she's highlighting. And it's got nothing to do with, we joked about the perfect deadlift and all that sort of stuff. But what she's saying is get help, validate how you really feel, find a focus, a purpose, a goal, and face those fears. I can't tell you how important all of that is. It is the solution right there. She's giving it to you right here. And all the other stuff is fine. You can learn how to do cardio right. You can learn how to eat right. You can learn how to exercise right. All of that stuff's relatively simple. And I know that might infuriate some people, but once you get there, you'll realize that that's true. But it's the stuff before, the preparation for, the sharpening your axe for 6 hours if you've got 8 hours to chop a tree down, all of that. And what Kirstie's just given you is the antidote, is the solution. Help, validation, purpose, facing your fears. And I'm just really grateful for it. I think it comes from a really good place.
Thank you for it's been like an amazing opportunity to talk about it as well. So I really hope.
And for me, I've really enjoyed listening to you. What you said there about blame, I think that's powerful. We could have a whole conversation around that, because I think, I think blame comes from asking yourself why all the time. Like, why is a really tricky word, right? Because you need to understand your why in order to know what your purpose is. Like, why are you doing this? If you're not doing it for the right reasons, then it will most likely fail, or it'll be harder than it needs to be. But actually, sometimes when you ask yourself why, you do end up blaming. You end up blaming yourself or somebody else. And I think you can end up in what you spoke about earlier, that sort of victim mentality, or focusing on the past, or focusing on your limitations, instead of like thinking. I always say with clients, like, don't say why, don't ask why, ask what. Ask what instead. What was the problem? Not why did this happen. It's like, what happened? What led to it? What could I have done differently? All these what, because that will focus you on growth. That will focus you on analyzation of the situation, which is what you did. You analyzed your life, and that must have been really hard, because there would have been things that you didn't want to be true but were, and that's difficult. That's accepting that emotion. And then then you end up focusing on the solution and the impact of what's happened, and all of that stuff you've done. And I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to you. You are an absolute inspiration. And what's so funny to me is that you're just getting started.
Started. Like,
yeah,
it's like what I kind of achieved this year. I'd worked so hard on, a bit like we touched on before. Those the broken glass, the tears, trauma, all the things that no one sees behind closed doors. I worked so hard on for that 2022, almost those pinnacle moments. And I think that we talked about children earlier, and the big thing that happened when I got my pro card, and my girls had made banners, like, for kind of for the day, and all I could hear was them screaming and shouting. And the thing is, whatever you say about competing, my children are clear it's not about like a physique. They know it's a challenge. And the pride, like, that they had, and the commitment and the dedication that they now understand goes into that, into that journey, into that goal. And it's quite funny, because my daughter said to me, my eldest, because I said about, next year, it's a big year. And she turned around to me and she went, yeah, mummy, because you're a pro now and you've got to raise your game.
I love it.
Because I was like, that's something that, I would say to myself. But, my children dance, like both girls dance. So there's a level of like discipline and commitment there.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's really tough. But I feel like they have a stronger mindset, because of me. And the thing that I want to say to anybody who does feel like rock bottom, or feels like they're struggling, like, remember the action you take. Of course I did it because I wanted to feel better, but there was a huge part of me that wanted to make my daughters proud. We shape our children's life. We shape their lives. The habits we have, the lifestyle we lead, everything impacts them, everything. And I want my daughters to have, the best chance. I want them to grow into strong, confident women. I didn't want them to be like me, standing in front of a mirror, hating on myself, not having a silly photo taken, or, worrying about how I look or how I feel on a day-to-day basis. I never wanted them to ever go through that. And that, we talked about motivation and discipline. And I guess, that was a motivational drive for me, because, it's important that they are growing up, with somebody that they're influenced by, that they can look up to. And, competing won't be forever for me. It definitely will have, that this will be, next year will be the final year. I can officially say that. But I'm literally going all in.
Yeah.
But there will always be something that I'll want to challenge myself or set as a goal, you know.
I can see big things for you in the future. Like you've got a lot more to offer than just how to squat. For sure. You really have. But I mean, I love what you say there, because it just shows you, doesn't it? It's like, no matter how crappy you feel, no matter how awful your day is, lack of sleep, feeling not well, whatever it is, there's this little person out there that believes you could do anything. And that's just fantastic. That really is amazing.
Yeah.
Is there any, just before we stop, is there anything that you'd like to pass on that could help people with their self-development?
I think the biggest that we've spoken obviously so much, but I think the biggest thing is to allow yourself to feel how you feel and ensure that your feelings are completely valid all the time, but don't let it consume you. My God, did it consume me for so long? Don't let it consume you. Don't let it paralyze you or make you feel so full of fear that you can't move forward. Acknowledge it, you know, and accept it. Get the help and support that you need. But in terms of development and growth, almost use it to like harness like what you want, like to channel you forward, you know, to take back that power and control. Because the thing is, you have got that power inside you. You've just got to allow yourself to move forward past all that fear that you already have. And never think of yourself as, the final point, never think of yourself as like having an end date. You know, you can
when I get to this will happen.
Yes, like someone will say to me, and I'm sure you get it, Johnny, like someone will say to me, when I lose X weight, right? Or when this dress size, or when I'm this, and I'm like, okay, so what happens then for you? So I think in terms of any form of development, personal development, you don't have to stop. You know, you can keep growing. You can keep moving forward. Think of your transformation as not having an end date. Like, think of it as an actual like journey that, you know, you're going through. And I think it changes, you know, how you view and embrace those day-to-day emotions, those feelings, the good days, the bad days.
You accept them all, don't you?
Yeah.
You accept them all. It's like, you know, when people say to me that they feel sad, and I say, "Oh, what's made you feel sad?" and they tell me, and I say, "Yeah, that makes sense." I think I'd feel sad if that happened to me too. It's like, well, this constant conflict that I was talking about, because that's where the pain is. It's in the conflict. It's in the denial of, I shouldn't feel this way. I don't feel this way. I'm just going to pretend, blah, blah, blah. Fake it till you make it. All that's nah. Be real. Tell people how you feel and see what happens. It's a game changer. But you're amazing. I'm really, really grateful for this time to get together today. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and anything you want to draw their attention to?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Kirstie George Fitness. And yeah, you know, I'm really, really open in DMs. So if people want to reach out or, you know, just ask questions, I do lots of Q&As and things like that as well. So, and I do obviously have, you know, some coaching spaces for the new year, but I do like to keep things, you know, quite small so that I can give time and attention. So yeah, you can get all my links as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you for being on. Thank you for all this wisdom. I know I can already think of a large percentage of people I get messages from regarding the podcast who are going to love this. So makes me really happy. Have you got a website?
Yes, website georgefitness.com, and then my book as well is on there as well, so Build Habits for Women, but you can also grab that on my social media links as well. And
what's the Instagram social handle? What is that?
Fitness. So everything on Facebook, Instagram, Kirstie George Fitness.
Kirstie George Fitness. Perfect. Kirstie, thank you so much. And I look forward to doing this again somehow, although we have done about an hour and a half. So yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.